What's poppin', my NFL Draft Gurus? It's your boy Mark here with Marcky Sports. And before I start this video, I want to give a really big shout out. You probably will never watch this, but some of my favorite YouTube content creators, Bro Schmo, Bengal, obviously Connor Rogers and Trevor Sycamore from the NFL Stock Exchange. Love these guys. And I got this idea today of what I call Mock the Mock, or what they call Mock the Mock, where we look at some of the best draft experts, some of the guys that we like in the industry, and kind of give us our analysis and our opinions on their mock draft. So shout out to them first and foremost. Check out their content. They're awesome. They're obviously huge on YouTube. But they inspired me to want to make this video. I figured I love to watch it, and why the hell not make my own version of it? So if you love NFL draft content, if you love Denver sports as well, be sure to hit that subscribe button, guys. Like the video, and it'll really help me out. So let's get into it here, guys. Let's do it. Let's talk about Daniel Jeremiah. He's on Mock Draft 3.0. And as we dive in, pretty vanilla at the top. Cam Ward going to the Tennessee Titans. I think this is something that obviously makes sense. It's not really a secret in the NFL anymore. They're going to love it. They fall in love with his skill set, his tools, and they're going to get the franchise quarterback. And I think it's good for Brian Callahan to be able to do that. He needs to be able to pick his own quarterback instead of, be stuck with Will Levis. So that's what he does. All right, the Cleveland Browns are going to Abdul Carter. This is a little bit interesting to me. I think it's a really good pick. Don't get it twisted. He's an unbelievable pass rusher. He's somebody that can continue to fortify that defense. I like it because it can really strengthen a strength for them as they figure out their quarterback situation. If they don't love Shador, then they could go with Abdul Carter. I think someone like Travis Hunter would make a lot of sense because he can fill a need on offense from the wide receiver standpoint in a very specific role. But he can be a shutdown corner opposite of Denzel Ward, also strengthening that defense. But I'm good with this. Abdul Carter makes a lot of sense. The New York Giants take Shador Sanders, and this is something that I really do hope happens because I believe that Shador Sanders is just a stud. I think he's the best quarterback in this draft personally. I know a lot of guys, they fall in love with all the tools and the strong arm and blah, blah, blah. But Shador Sanders has a lot of the traits that you don't need to coach up. That's usually a really big developmental curve when it comes to a lot of these younger NFL guys. He's very accurate. He's poised in the pocket. Sure, he holds onto the ball a little bit long, but that's something that you can certainly coach out of him. But man, is he willing to stand strong in the pocket and take a hit. He has shown that and deliver a beautiful ball. I think he's got a great mind working with Pat Shurmur. Yeah, he wasn't, the best offensive mind ever, but the pro style offense is going to help him. He's motivated. I think it's going to be a really great pick there for the New York Giants. Travis Hunter going to the New England Patriots. I think that makes a whole bunch of sense. He's just a baller. Vrabel's going to love him there. They did a good job adding a lot of pieces in free agency. Just like he says here, bolstering the offensive line would seem to be the obvious move, but it is going to be tough to pass on Hunter. He'd immediately be a great weapon for May. He'd also be able to really help them out defensively. And the New England Patriots are in a unique spot. I can see them as a team moving back into the upper half of the first round and be able to maybe get an offensive lineman that they're looking after. So I like the move a lot there. This one was very, very interesting to me, and I liked it. I like it a lot. Now, I'm not going to lie. This is the first time I've really looked through Daniel Jeremiah's mock in depth. I usually, when I see it, I scroll down, I say, who do you choose for the Broncos, and I typically move on. But this one really threw me for a loop a little bit here with Jalen Walker. He says Jalen Walker would form a dynamic trio with Josh Hines Allen, Trayvon Walker. It is true. They would have an unbelievable pass rush. I think Jalen Walker is a super slept on in this draft. But the thing that scares me with him is what position are they going to play? But if they were to commit Jalen Walker as an edge, with the ability to maybe, drop back in coverage and be a little bit more of an off-ball linebacker, he's an unbelievable talent. I personally wouldn't take him here if I was the Jags, just because I think Mason Graham is an absolute terror, but he is falling on a couple people's draft boards. What it seems, Daniel Jeremiah is super locked into the league. Mel Kiper is super locked into the league. They both had Mason Graham falling a little bit more than previous, so that could be a hint. But hey, nonetheless, man, that would be a very interesting and exciting pick for the Jags to take Jalen Walker, and that would be a crazy trio. No lies there. All right, moving on to the Vegas Raiders. Ashton Jeanty is who they are going to have picked here. This is pretty much the most common situation. Obviously, as a Bronco fan, I wouldn't like to go, against Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers 2 times a year. But what I will say is that when you really look at it with the Raiders, right, this would be an exciting pick, and it wouldn't be a bad pick for them. But from a value standpoint, taking running back early is never something that's really smart, especially when you don't really have your franchise quarterback. Now, I get they got Geno Smith, which is helpful, which is why this pick will now make a lot of sense for them. Another pick for them that if it was me and I was a GM, I would probably want to go after Mason Graham. Obviously, you could tell I'm high on him. But man, Max Crosby, Mason Graham on that defensive line, really helping the defense out. That would be huge. They could always get a really good running back later. But I wouldn't have an issue with it. Also, if they took Ashton Genty at 6, I think he's the type of player that's very worth it. I'm just always personally hesitant of taking running backs really in the first round, but let alone this early. But Ashton Genty is the GOAT. The GOAT when it comes to running backs in this class, no doubt about it, and one of the best that I've seen really in my lifetime. He's an unbelievable prospect, so good for them there. The New York Jets are going with Armand Membu. I love this. I think it would be a smart move. I don't really know if the Jets would do it, to be honest with you, but it's a hell of a move. I think Armand Membu is probably the best overall offensive lineman in the draft, and I love his flexibility. He had a great combine. He's an absolute stud. It's a great pick there for the Jets. And the Carolina Panthers sitting at 8. I had them in my mock. I had them taking Jalen Walker, so we're basically flipping those picks. They would be thrilled with Mason Graham. He would be an absolute stud there for him. And yes, they did fall short in their pursuit of Milton Williams, but this would be one hell of a, not even a consolation prize. This is a player that could be more dominant and more effective than Milton Williams, younger, and significantly cheaper. So if this happens, they certainly could have dodged the bullet. Mason Graham's a stud. He'd be an awesome fit there for the Carolina Panthers. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints. This was another interesting one, man. I love Daniel Jeremiah because a lot of the times you look at him and you're like, yeah, it's kind of crazy, or no one else has that mocked. And a lot of the times he proves to be right. Jihad Campbell, the Alabama linebacker, going to the New Orleans Saints. Now, I love the player, and I think he's worthy of being the number 9 pick. I just don't think it's necessarily the smartest move for the Saints. They have a lot of weapons. They need to get franchise guys at very high value positions, like pass rusher, obviously along the D line, tackle, quarterback. That's not something that they'll necessarily be able to take in this draft, even though I believe they're the team to look out for as a trade up candidate to get Shador. Shador makes a lot of sense there. Kellen Moore would love someone like him. So I think that's ultimately what they're going to do. But Jihad Campbell is a hell of a good player. Seems like something that the Saints would do. The Saints always kind of do some wild stuff. So makes sense there. And then the Bears are going to go with Will Campbell. That's a really great pick for them. Do they actually do that? I think we will find out. But that would be a really smart move for them. Protect Caleb Williams. Continue on that. They did a really good job. Really, really good job fortifying the O-line in free agency with a couple big name additions. Joe Tooney. It's a big one for him. Darnell Wright as the right tackle. I don't think they added him, but he'll be a really good tackle opposite of him, just like Daniel Jeremiah said here. They've got enough weapons for him. So Will Campbell would be a really smart move. And to be honest with you, Ashton Genty not being available here could really save them because this is a really smart move for the Bears. San Francisco 49ers, look at this, man. He's really switching it up on everybody. I love it. Jahdae Barrett, one of my favorite cornerback prospects. I love his inside-out versatility. He is a type of player that would fit in Robert Saleh's scheme now that he's back there with the Niners. I still think they should probably fortify the O-line, but it is a big need for him. He's a good player, so we'll smoke to that. I can dig that. That's something that seems like it would make a ton of sense for the Niners. And I do like Jahdae Barrett over Will Johnson personally because I love the fact that he could play inside, outside. I think the NFL really looks for those kinds of guys. Even if he's going to be a true outside corner, the fact that they can move him inside if they need to or out, depending on who else is on their roster, is always, the flexibility is awesome. And he's just a playmaker, man. And another one that I love, Daniel Jeremiah and me seem like maybe we're on the same wavelength. I will never put myself in that category, but Matthew Golden is an absolute stud, the best wide receiver, if you're not counting Travis Hunter as a wide receiver, in this draft. He would be a hell of a pick for the Cowboys. Better than Ted McMillan for the Cowboys specifically, because he would complement what CeeDee Lamb does really well. This dude gets open. He glides. It looks really effortless, and that's why I think a lot of people are like, what's so special about him? Because everything looks easy. Receivers that make things look easy, it's always a really good thing there. So, love that pick for the Cowboys. Hate the Cowboys. Love that pick for him, though. No doubt about it. And in the Miami Dolphins going Malachi Starks, this is something that makes sense for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it makes sense because he would be a really good fit for Miami after they lost Javon Holland. But in addition to that, even though I think that they really need O-line help and that would be the best pick for them, I don't see them doing it. So this is something that makes sense from that standpoint in terms of realistic. Malachi Starks, phenomenal safety, playmaker out there in center field. And I think it's, if it's not going to be an O-lineman, it's a good pick for him. And then everybody and their mother has this pick happening right now, pre and post free agency. Tyler Warren going to the Indianapolis Colts. And I ain't going to lie to you guys. I don't think he makes it to 14 once the draft actually starts, because I just think he's that good. And anytime you have those prospects that are good, but they're not really being talked about a lot, it's because people want to keep it on the hush-hush. It would be a hell of a pick. If Anthony Richardson can't, get any better or take the next leap with him on the team, then you're going to have to just look to move on. But I don't think it's going to be Anthony Richardson, man. I don't think he's at all an NFL quarterback. Sorry, Colts fans. But regardless if it's Daniel Jones or somebody else in the future, Tyler Warren's a great pick. As a Bronco fan, it breaks my heart, but I've kind of come to the terms that he's not going to be available for us at 20. Great pick for the Colts there. He's got Will Johnson going to the Atlanta Falcons. This is actually really interesting. I think it's something that would make a lot of sense. It's a pick that would make a lot of sense for the Falcons. They could use just some more playmakers, really all along their defense. Opposite of can't think of the name. AJ Terrell, right? They got there in Atlanta. All right, we got it. And yeah, he's a good player. They're a terrible pass rush team. They have been fortified it a little bit, but Will Johnson, I can't argue with the pick because he's a really good player, and I think the value for him at 15 is just about right. So from that standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. And then Gray Zabel, look at that, going to the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people are going to think it's crazy. Cardinals taking interior lineman, at 16. Here's the interesting thing about Gray Zabel. I think he's phenomenal at center. I think he's a phenomenal guard. And he played tackle at North Dakota State. Yes, he doesn't have length that you're looking for in the NFL, but he can do it. That kind of versatility is going to be helpful for any team. It would be a little bit of a shock to see him go 16, I guess. I guess just because Tyler Booker's more that interior guy, but because this guy can play outside, it makes sense. So I like it. I like it for the Cardinals. I think it's a really smart move. Anytime you can get a very good offensive lineman that can play all 5 positions on your line, it's never going to be a bad thing. And then he's got Mike Green going to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think this is the first legitimate true only edge, right? That was taken so far. Yeah, that's what it looks like. I know they took Jalen Walker, but even though he's listed as an edge, he's played off-ball linebacker. This guy, Mike Green, is a pure edge. I think he's the best pure pass rusher in this draft. And coming out of Marshall, there's some off-the-field stuff that I know when you listen to the stories and the reports, it looks like he really didn't have to do with a lot of it. But he might drop in the draft. But if he doesn't, and if all that stuff gets, it doesn't seem to be a big deal for a lot of these teams, Mike Green is a tremendous value at pick number 17 for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they can definitely use it. Definitely use it on that defensive line. And listen, the Bengals, they did something that I felt was exciting but extremely stupid, and committing all that money to both receivers, right? To both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But if you do that, you need to nail the draft, and at least getting an edge is the right step number 1. So we'll see there. Colston Loveland to the Seattle Seahawks. That's the first time I think I've actually seen him be mocked to Seattle. Now that they got Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp, along with Colston Loveland, it just seems like it's a little bit confusing to me. Because Colston Loveland is a big slot receiver. Are you going to ask Cooper Kupp to play on the outside? You're going to ask Jackson Smith and Jigba to play on the outside? Those guys are more slot guys. So they play, from a receiving standpoint, similar roles. I don't know if the fit makes sense for Seattle. But, maybe they just trust that they'll be able to figure it all out. So who knows? We'll see. I don't hate it. All right. Donovan Ezeruwaku. I think that's how you say it. I got to get better at saying his name. Going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a player that is really coming onto the map now. I think at this point, he's locked to be a first rounder. Makes a ton of sense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They probably would have loved to have Jihad Campbell. In this mock, he went a lot earlier. But Donovan Ezeruwaku makes a lot of sense here from Boston College. A terror of a pass rusher. Very, very good player. And I think he fits the Todd Bowles scheme really well. That just makes a ton of sense for the Buccaneers. All right, pick number 20, my Denver Broncos. And let me preface by saying I've made a lot of videos on this. If the Broncos took Omarion Hampton, I would be very excited as a fan. The fan in me would be pumped because I love Omarion Hampton. And I think he's a really great player. And I think he's worthy of being picked. I think he's one of the top 20 players in this draft? He's borderline. But it's a huge need for the Broncos, and they get taken here. But then the GM in me, right? I'm not a GM, but I like to think about it from a standpoint of, okay, what's the smart move? Right? I kind of compare it to I always wanted to buy a brand new car. And it's exciting for me to buy a brand new car, but my dad would always tell me it's not smart. So I try to look at it from those two different angles, right? Drafting a running back in the first round is rarely a smart. It's usually never smart, especially in this draft where there's so many good running backs. So I'd be excited for this pick, but it would not be a good value pick for the Denver Broncos. It would not. I would take, if Ted McMillan was there and we passed on him for Omarion Hampton, I might go a little bit crazy once I kind of sat down and thought about it. But it is what it is. It makes sense. It's a huge need for the Broncos. I also think Travion Henderson is just a better fit for what Sean Payton wants to do. But anyways, made a lot of videos on that. Sorry to go down the rabbit hole. Let's keep going. Jackson Dart going to Pittsburgh would just be hilarious. As the time of filming this video, Aaron Rodgers is visiting Pittsburgh. It looks like that's going to be a thing. Jackson Dart would still make sense. I mean, he would actually make more sense if Aaron Rodgers was there because he needs to sit and learn. But that'd be the most Pittsburgh Steelers thing, to take a quarterback in the 20s. And if they really don't trade up for him, trading up for him is different. Even if they don't need to trade up for him, I'll tell you why it's different, because it shows a legitimate commitment to him. So that would make me feel a little bit better. But, hey, I don't think Jackson Dart's good. Sorry. But it makes sense for the Pittsburgh. Maybe they're going to swing in. Maybe they hit this time. They missed with Kenny Pickett. Jackson Dart's definitely a different kind of quarterback. So we'll see. Teteroa McMillan going to the Chargers would shatter my heart. If he fell all the way to 22 and our division rival took him, it would hurt my heart, but I would sit up and I would applaud. That is an A-plus pick. He would just fit so well with Jim Harbaugh, what they want to do. He'd be an amazing complement to Ladd McConkey. That would be a dangerous offense, and good pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. There's no other way around it. Maxwell Harrison going to the Green Bay Packers. I love it. I do think this guy has a potential to sneak into the first round, especially after killing it at the Combine. We don't know what's going on with Jair Alexander, just like he says. Maxwell Harrison makes a ton of sense. I like that a lot for the Packers, but I'm sure Packers fans would much rather have a pass rusher, somebody that can really get after the quarterback, over a corner, but he's a really good player, and he'd be a good fit there. Minnesota Vikings going with Nick Emmanwori. Wow. You know what? Now that I think about it, they lost Cam Bynum, I believe, right? I don't think they re-signed him. Can't remember. But anyways, Harrison Smith, just like I said here, is entering his 14th season. Nick Emmanwori is an absolute stud. He is a stud, and he would fit Brian Flores' defense phenomenally. So this would actually be a really good pick for Minnesota. First time I've seen him be mocked to Minnesota. Makes a lot of sense. And that's why Daniel Jeremiah is one of my GOATs. Ain't no doubt about it. Kelvin Banks Jr. going to the Texans. A tackle here makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to lie, I haven't done a lot of work on the tackles this year. He seems like someone that is talked about very highly. He's got some inside-out versatility. From what I've read and seen, he fits really well in zone schemes. So he would work there in Texas with their new coordinator there coming over from the Rams. And I like it. Obviously, they traded Laramie Tunsil. So a tackle here would make a ton of sense. No doubt about it. And the Houston Texans, man, they've done a good job drafting. So I trust that they'd make the right move. This one was a shock. This one is a shock for me right now. Because Trey Amos, I think he's a good player. Do I think he's a first-round corner? I don't know. But there's a lot of corners going in this draft. So Daniel Jeremiah must know something. He knows a lot more than I do. He must feel like this is not only a really good cornerback class, which there is some good depth, but there's first-round talent in there that they're going to be going early. Interesting. Really, really interesting piece there. I feel like at this point, the Rams, they could have gone in a lot of different directions. I mean, Trey Amos, the cornerback makes sense for them. So I don't really know what else to say. That's interesting. That's a really, really interesting proposition there. So, hey, it ain't my squad. Cool with me. All right. Derek Harmon going to the Ravens. That's such a Ravens pick. Phenomenal pick. Somebody that I would rather my Broncos draft over Omarion Hampton at 20, to be honest. I think Derek Harmon is a terror. I think he's a phenomenal player. He's really good against the run. I love his height and weight combo. And he's got a ton of upside as a pass rusher. And he can play inside. He could play one tech for a 3-4 team. He could play three tech. He's a really good player. I love Derek Harmon. I think he's just scratching the surface of just how good he can be. So makes so much sense for the Ravens. Love that pick for him. Mikael Williams as an edge rusher going to the Lions. He fell a little bit in this mock. So, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he'd be a great compliment for Aiden Hutchinson and what they want to do there as just a get after it type of defense. Mikael Williams, I like that there. And look how many corners. 5. I think that's 5 corners going in the first round so far. Does he have more? Let's see. Get a little sneak peek. Wow. That's shocking to me. It really is. It's a little bit shocking to me, but I think Azareye'h Thomas is a stud too. I like him actually more than somebody like a Trey Amos. Big, tall, physical, comes from the Florida State background. I think he makes a lot of sense for the Commanders. I think it'd be a good pick for him. I feel like, even though they got Deebo Samuel, maybe they could look at continuing to add more weapons, but hey, Azareye'h Thomas makes a lot of sense there. That's crazy. That's a lot of corners going in this mock draft. And then Kenneth Grant to the Bills would be thrilled because if the board fell the way that it did and, they were either going to get Derek Harmon or Kenneth Grant, either one of those guys, absolute studs, really helps them out with being able to continue to fortify that defensive line, continue to get better. They're one of the better run-stopping teams. They're going to get more physical. He adds a great presence alongside Ed Oliver. And, Greg Rousseau was re-signed there on the edge. That would be a really good addition to their defense, and I think that's where they need to continue adding in Buffalo to get stronger, to get tougher, and to increase their chances of winning in the playoffs. I feel like Josh Allen is going to win a Super Bowl. I hope he does at some point, and this is a really good pick to continue to add to that defensive line for the Bills. Love Kenneth Grant. Think he's a stud. I don't think he falls to 30, but then again, guys, remember, these guys are plugged into the league, so you can always get a lot of really good insights from it. Josh Simmons going to the Kansas City Chiefs just makes a ton of sense. They need a lot of help on their O-line. They need to kind of go back to basics and continue to do what they can to protect Patrick Mahomes. Their offensive line, as you saw in the Super Bowl, got killed. Josh Simmons would make a ton of sense there. And then Shamar Stewart, if he fell all the way down to the Philadelphia Eagles at pick number 32, man, the league would just really love to give the Eagles some guys that just have crazy upside. Shamar Stewart's one of those guys, like if I was a GM of a team, I would always select production over potential, right? Because I'm like, man, if this guy was such an unbelievable athlete and just different, but you're getting 1.5 sacks. I don't care if you're being double teamed. I don't care if you're playing with an injury. 1.5 sacks in consecutive seasons in college would always be a big red flag to me. But these, if there's anybody that knows how to draft high upside players and turn them into some all pros, it is Howie Roseman there with the Philadelphia Eagles. You know what? This is one of those situations, guys, where when I watch the video, I super enjoy it. But then when you do it, you actually enjoy it a lot more. This was a lot of fun. I hope you all enjoyed it, man. That was Daniel Jeremiah. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know what you guys think. And thanks for tuning in, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a wonderful day. Spend time with those you love the most. And until the next video, y'all take care and peace out.